Thank you, Mike. Rest in peace, Dan. But it's a gift that was shared with us that you have helped live on today. I appreciate that. So I mentioned the Bible refers to God as Father some 1,000 times. And you can go through and you can look at those, what we call God. And you could take each one of those and just look at them. But today I want us to look at not what we call God, but how God calls us to live. So it doesn't matter, God of many names. How does God call us to live? And how does God call men to function in the world, or parents to function in the world so their kids know God's love? Captured pretty well in Deuteronomy verses 6, 5 through 9. This is really the heart of the gospel, and you hear me preach it all the time. But here it says, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might." These three commandments are given to us in the Old Testament. But go on and see what it says here. I give you this today, I give to you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them upon your children, so to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Impress them upon your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk up the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie these symbols to your hands and bind them to your foreheads. Write them on your door frames of your house and your gates. So point blank, parents are told to teach their children to love God. Then the psalmist reminds us that as a father has compassion for his children, so does God have compassion for you. Now, studies show that most of us, our image of God is based on our image of our father, earthly father. So for me, God looks a little like Buddy Hackett with a great sense of humor and is a silly kind of guy with 8 toes. But that's God for me. But for some people, that's not a good image. Because for some people, what happened was God is a God of fear, God is a God of anger, God is a God not of compassion. So today I want to encourage you to take those images and be mindful that when we're told to parent our children, we're told to parent them to love God with our entire being. It's important to remember that. There's an essay contest every year in the National Center for Fatherings each year has this essay contest. And here are some of the entries from this past year. First grader once said, "My dad is the best dad ever. I would kiss a pig for him." Another first grader said this, "My dad is a Frito-Lay man. That's an important job because Frito-Lay means food, and people need food, and my dad feeds people." Third grader once said, "My dad isn't really my dad because he is my grandpa, but he is a grandpa dad." Listen up, gardeners, because he's been there since before I was born. When I get older, he's going to teach me about wood and about first aid and about everything else he knows so that I can be a good grandpa dad too when I grow up. One fourth grader says, "I put my stinky socks in my dad's briefcase when he goes on a trip so he won't forget me." Another kid said, "My dad lives about an hour away, but he always comes to my concerts and my games." Fifth grader says, "My dad braids my hair. None of the other girls' dads braids their hair. So I want you to know, my dad braids my hair, and that is very important." Sixth grader wrote this, "I had a solo at my assembly once, and my dad was in the first row. When I finished, I smiled at him. He smiled back and started to cry. That was the best day ever." Today, I think the song that Mike sang for us is kind of Dan's essay to his dad. Dan Fogelberg wrote this song in 1979, and he considered having it published then, but decided it just didn't feel like a hit for that particular album. But then in 1981, he did go ahead and have it put on an album. And it's a song about his father, Lawrence Fogelberg. The senior, Lawrence Fogelberg, began his music journey directing high school bands in his home state of Illinois, first in Peoria and then on into Pekin. He married his sweetheart, Margaret Irvine, a talented singer who directed her sorority choir in 1946, and they had 3 kids. Dan was the youngest. By the time he was born, his dad was the band director at Bradley University in Peoria, where his parents lived. The band would play concerts and perform at basketball and football games, and Dan often told the story about his father letting him conduct the band when he was just 4 years old, standing in front of his father with the baton while his dad did the job behind him. He said, "It felt amazing." Dan recounted, "It was both very magical and powerful, and in that moment, I was fearless." When Fogelberg wrote the song, leader of the band, as I mentioned before, he didn't hear a hit. But when that song came out in 1981, something happened. People listened, and people requested the song more than any other song that Dan Fogelberg wrote. It's been said that this song expressed something that so many of us children have trouble articulating, a love for our fathers. The intimacy of the song actually broadened its appeal, they believe, and it became, as I said, one of his most enduring hits. The line, "Thank you for the freedom when it came my time to go," is a reference to Dan Fogelberg dropping out of college. See, he attended college at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, but he decided to leave in the middle of the semester to pursue music. Not what most parents want to hear from their college students. But Fogelberg's father was disappointed, of course, but supported his son in this decision, telling Dan, "Give it a year, and then we'll check in and see what's going on." The music thing, as we all know, worked out well for Dan. He settled in Los Angeles, he got record deals, and became one of the top-selling artists of the 1970s. I don't know if you heard that really special little riff at the end that Jeff played so beautifully for us, but it almost sounds like horns when you listen to it. Go home and listen to it again. And that actually is a section that Dan took from his dad's own writing. His dad wrote for the UCLA band, the Washington Post. It was an arrangement that included that same riff. In John 14, Jesus talks about, when you see me, you see my Father. When you see me, you know my dad through me. That's what he tries to tell his disciples before he leaves this earth. He wants to make sure the disciples know that his message is the message of his Father. That indeed the legacy that he wishes to leave is a legacy of love, loving God, loving one another. I think it's important for us to be mindful that we too have a legacy that we're leaving. Like Jesus, we want to leave a legacy of love, not only for God, but for one another, because that's why we're here. Today, I want to remind each and every one of us that we have a role on Father's Day. Even if you didn't have a good father, you can create a legacy of love to pass on to somebody else, be it braiding somebody's hair or driving that mile to that ball game or to that concert. Your legacy may not be one where your father was the leader of the band, but your legacy can be one of love. Amen.
This is me and my dad, just a couple years ago. But today I'm here to share in a reading of a blog that's very appropriate for today. My father was far from a perfect dad. In fact, many times I wish he wasn't my father. Suffice it to say, my dad's life did not turn out the way he had planned, and that fact made him bitter. When that bitterness seeped out, he turned into somebody that nobody wanted to be around. But as he got older, he mellowed, and he seemed happier and more at ease. Maybe it was the inevitability of aging that made him reevaluate his life. Working less and cultivating his hobbies seemed to give him some relief from his mental burdens. And becoming a grandfather absolutely changed him. As time went on, old wounds healed, and I became closer to my dad and more inclined to let go of the past and enjoy the present. But right as my relationship with my dad was getting rejuvenated, he was gone, a victim of a stroke. Suddenly, I was writing a eulogy summing up the life of a man I was just getting to know. It's been 5 years since he died, and with each passing year, the bad memories fade and the good ones crystallize. I figure as a daughter who lost his father, I have the right to choose to remember what I want to and let go of the other stuff. The biggest positive thing I remember about my dad is he was 100% confident that I was born to do great things. That man did what he could to ensure I would attain excellence in my life, especially when it came to my education. In fact, he wanted me to go to a private high school in the city so badly that every day of my freshman year, he drove 50 miles round trip to and from school. Thankfully, bus service came into play during my sophomore year, but he would have kept driving until I got my license. In his eyes, I deserved the best education, and he'd drive me wherever I had to go in order to get it for me. When I was accepted into several colleges, my father insisted I go to the best college, despite the cost. When I wanted to change my focus from teaching to writing, he cheered me on and convinced I would be successful, best-selling writer. And when I graduated from Boston College with honors, my dad was bursting with pride, although he's sure that the college got it wrong and that I actually graduated with higher honors. No dad is perfect, and mine is more imperfect than many, but he was my dad. When Father's Day comes in June, I choose to remember how my dad had utterly faith in the idea that I was born to do great things. And in honor of his faith in him, I am continually striving to do great things, big and small, in my life and in the life of others. Right before he died, I had told him that of my plans of starting this blog. He would be floored to see where my blog is now and how it's turned into a community that helps women around the world. Actually, I take that back. That's exactly what he would have expected from me.
It was my sister that first diagnosed my father with cuss word Tourette's, as we called it. Disease that only affects men, probably most famously carried by Ralphie's dad in A Christmas Story as he was changing the tire on the side of the road. We paused for a moment to think of those afflicted with that disease. So today I get to share my observations about fatherhood, to remind you all to spend this day reminiscing about the stories you have as a dad, as a granddad, or of your dad or granddad, as you're grilling or cooking out or bailing water out of the basement perhaps today, but the things you're supposed to do on Father's Day, and perhaps it's my message to soon-to-be Father Matt, who's in the audience today. So there you are as a man. Life's pretty good. Got the relationship, got the job, got the car. You might be a brother, an uncle, or a cousin, but you're definitely a son. So you're ready for that next step in your life, and then the next thing you know, bam, this happens. Slaps you upside the head, knocks you down, blows your mind. A few things happen to the man when he becomes the father. He starts to get presents for Father's Day, which is pretty cool. But even more so, his heart expands logarithmically to carry the love for this new creature in his arms while not pushing anyone else out of his heart. He changes his first diaper. This is a whole lot different than changing the cat box. How can that sweet tiny little thing, well, you learn a lot about life at this moment. And he relates more to his partner. You know, women get flexibility in their joints to help with delivery. Now dads get it, because we start to get flexibility in the joints in our back as we are slowly wrapped around the little finger of this little creature. And as their charges grow, dads come into their own. We're the keepers of the bizarre, the masters of the out of bounds, and the kings of testing boundaries when mom's not around. We do that well. Chocolate cake for breakfast? Sure, why not? Chocolate's a food group. I heard Mom say that once. Dads are in charge of the outdoors, especially getting outfitted with stuff. We get to buy tents and fishing poles, jet skis, four-wheelers, RVs, and the like. And this is when we finally get our shopping gene fully developed and our Dad Jones on. So let's take this, we get a little bit of the man creeping back in here. Let's go on a field trip in the park. What's that? Is it an owl pellet? Let's look at it. Let's dissect it. Let's see what he had for dinner. Let's take it home to show Mom. And then the dad sort of kicks in. Well, let's be sure to wash our hands really, really well. Let's put this in a Ziploc bag. Actually, let's leave it in the backyard and let's maybe not tell Mom about it. We grow into a love for a whole pack of friends and siblings and relatives, and our heart expands again to include them all and to love them all. We organize soccer and softball, we make hot dogs, and we grind the ice cream, or we plug in the new ice cream freezer because it's our job to show kids that technology is their friend. Fatherhood seems to create universal physical responses in men. As Jim Gaffigan said, we seem to lose our hair at an ever-increasing rate. We develop that dad bod, and we relish the fashion experience of tall, dark socks with sandals. They're actually pretty comfortable, by the way. I encourage you to try it. Like a favorite old pair of jeans, we get more comfortable in our role and with our responsibilities and with the joys of watching our brood grow and develop. There are signature moments: first baby tooth, first day of school, soccer games, getting an award, going to Disney World. And then there's the first date. As the father of a daughter, I can relate to this. And a comedian once told a story about his daughter leaving on her first date. His wife walks up and says, "Who just left in your new Porsche?" "Oh, that was the daughter and Moondoggy, her date." And she says, "Why did you let him drive the Porsche?" And he said, "Because he drove up in that," and points to a van parked at the curb. Then they go off to college, they go off to work, and into the relationship of their life. And then at a watershed moment for Dad, he gets to give her away. Wait a minute. I spent how much time, how much energy, how much investment in this wonderful young woman, and I just give her away? Where's my payback? What's in this for me? Well, here it is, and it's huge. Gaining a son and a new family, feeling another logarithmic increase in the size of my heart to love this man and all he brings to my daughter, to me, to our family. That's a bargain, and dads love a bargain. And we get to bond over changing the timing belt on an old Volvo, sharing a cigar, segwaying on the beach with our new blended family. And now I get a new journey. In just 11 weeks, I'm going to be a grandfather. Can I say that again? A grandfather. Wow, it sounds so old. I'm not nearly old enough to be a grandpa. So little Mo's boy will have to call me Tip. That was my grandfather's nickname and a way for me to connect with my forebears and my progeny and still stay uber hip at the time. The really wonderful thing is I get another chance to do this all over again. I get to change another first diaper. Well, unless I give him back to Matt and Emily first. I get to buy a new fishing pole and hiking boots. You know they have hiking boots for toddlers? Oh my gosh, that's way cool. And we'll walk in the woods and be on patrol for an owl pellet, but I'll have hand sanitizers in both pockets now. And my heart will continue to expand logarithmically over and over again with the passage of time. And that's, my friends, is what we celebrate today, men's unlimited capacity for love.